I was interviewed one time by a lady that wrote a magazine, and I've got the story. But Nancy was a beautiful redhead, and she was an old soul. She used to wear the most outrageous outfits, and she had boots, and she was very colorful, and she liked odd people. She would collect them, and she fell in love, uh, and all of a sudden she left town with the man she fell in love with. He was an ex-Marine, not an ex, once a Marine, always a Marine, but he was a long-distance truck driver. And all of a sudden she told us she was going on the road with him. And they spent the next year or two traveling all around the country, and she loved it. They would go to these cowboy bars and dance and all kinds of things. And then they came back, and they got together, and I knew it was permanent because they moved in together. And they had lived together, and her father was real upset about that because to the day he died, he still didn't believe in that. But after they lived together for about 3 years, um, she had some health problems. And because I was working for a medical school, I they were way up, in research and stuff. So I brought her in, and she was tested after some surgery. Found out she was HIV positive, and that was in 1985. And they brought him in, and he was very HIV positive. And I don't know how he got it. It doesn't matter, but maybe in those days, drugs, IV drug, have no idea, and it makes no difference. But they went ahead and talked about it, and they got married. And they were married for 5 years before he died. He died in the same hospital where my husband was after he had strokes. And at that point, I never forgave him for doing that to my daughter. But my husband forgave him, and I'm glad he did, because Don died a day or so later. And then my husband died like 13 months later. And then Nancy, towards the end, she was testing the medication that are keeping most of the HIV people alive today. You don't have to die anymore with HIV. But she was so little. She was like, 4'11" and about 90 pounds. She just couldn't tolerate it anymore, and she finally stopped testing the medications because she was in a program where she was testing it. And she couldn't live alone anymore. And my oldest daughter, Maureen, she had 2 teenagers at the time, and it really took more than one person to take care of her. So they took her home with, my daughter took her home with her and her family. She lived with them for about 6 months before she passed away. But not once did I ever hear her blame her husband. It was, I don't think he, of course I know he didn't mean to give her that, but that's the danger of not being careful. And but she was quite a redhead, and I think after a while she became her father's favorite. She looked just like him. They both had the same color hair. But I am so glad that I had both Steve and Nancy in my life, even though I've lost them. It would have been terrible had I not had them at all. So sometimes you do have to go through pain to feel joy. I don't think you can experience joy unless you go through pain.